Hey everyone, John here! And if you follow Nintendo, then you have probably noticed that they tend to release a game every single month. It's very rare that a month goes by without a brand new Nintendo game. It does happen, but then it's kind of corrected by another month having multiple Nintendo games. So when you tally up all the games that are released in a year, you end up with 12, 13, 14 brand new first-party Nintendo games. And that doesn't really happen with the competition. Like comparing Nintendo's, let's say, 2021 to Sony's, Sony went 6 months without anything. That was just, the whole back of that year did not have a single release. And that's pretty common for PlayStation. Like 2022, May, nothing. June, nothing. July, nothing. August, nothing. September, The Last of Us Part 1. And then October, nothing. 2023, April, nothing, May, nothing, June, nothing, July, nothing, August, Firewall Ultra, September, nothing. This is a very frequent pattern because, of course, PlayStation put a lot more budget into their games and can release far fewer of them. But does this just come down to budget? Can Nintendo release more because they're spending less and are developing for less powerful hardware? Is that the end of it? Is that the only reason Nintendo release a game practically every month? No. So let me show you a game right here. This is Fire Emblem Engage, and we can actually tell exactly when this game was finished, and it was far, far before its release date. So Fire Emblem Engage launched in January of 2023, last year. However, we know it was finished in August of 2021. Not 2023, 2021. And how exactly do we know this? Well, the German rating board, USK, who you may know, one moment, who you may know for these giant ass ratings. So whenever there's a collector's edition, we get both USK and PEGI, which creates atrocities like this. USK, stop! You're pushing Captain Toad off the box! So on the USK website, you can type in any game and see exactly when it was rated. And yes, in the case of Fire Emblem Engage, it was rated in August 2021, not 2023. And that's very rare for any game to have been rated that early. But what exactly does it mean for a game to be rated? What state must it be in? Well, USK tell us. That's really exactly what they say is needed. So, on the USK submission and examination process, they say, send us the complete game in terms of content together. Blah, 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 blah. This must include printed materials such as the manual, cover, fact sheet, achievement and trophy lists, walkthroughs, cheats, and multiplayer games must need a way to review the multiplayer mode. So, basically, the game must be pretty much finished. And we can actually run an experiment here. We can see what games have publicly stated they've gone gold, meaning they are ready to print, versus when they were rated. So let's look at PlayStation, who quite commonly announce when their games have gone gold. So we'll start with Spider-Man 2. So Spider-Man 2, according to the USK, was rated in July of 2022. It released in October, so 3 months after that, but it went gold the month prior in September. So there were 2 months between that game being rated and that game being finalized. So the final bug-crushing, polishing state of the game, that 2 months between rate and going gold. Let's see another PlayStation game. Let's go with God of War Ragnarok. So that game went gold October 7th, 2022. It was rated August 2022. So it was finished 2 months after the rating and came out the month after. So it's the exact same thing as Spider-Man 2. There was a 2-month gap between rating the game and doing the final polish, making it ready for release, and then it releases 1 month later. And just going through a bunch of PlayStation games, that is pretty much the pattern. It's usually 2 months between rating and going gold. And you probably guessed, Nintendo aren't like that. Now, the vast majority of games are not Fire Emblem Engage. Most games are not finished 2 years before they release. However, it is not that uncommon for a game to be rated a year before it releases. In fact, it's pretty damn common. There's one other major example to bring up, and that is Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp, which was delayed because of the war. So when exactly was this game finished? Well, is actually really similar to Fire Emblem. So this game was rated August 2021 and released April 2023. So 2 years being sat on. Nintendo absolutely do sit on games, even though this one was more of an exception than this one. But what's the common thing? What's the common process between a game being rated and a game releasing for Nintendo? And keep in mind, this company basically never says when a game has gone gold. Nintendo don't tell us this stuff. Well, let's look at The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which released in May 2023. That game was rated October 2022, 7 months before release. And I imagine that game had a lot of polishing in that time. It's hard to say exactly when it was ready for print. I imagine they sat on it for a little bit, but that game most likely had extensive polishing time. Let's go further back though, 2022, and there are 2 games in this year that I find fascinating. So, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, when it was revealed, it was said to be a September game, although despite that, the game actually released in July. The reverse of a delay, it was brought forwards. Basically what happened was Xenoblade 3 and Splatoon 3 swapped dates. I imagine maybe Splatoon wasn't quite ready or something. But despite that, these games had the exact same rating to release period. So Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was rated 5 months before it released. And if it were to ship on its original September date, it would have 7 months before its release. Splatoon 3, the exact same. It was rated 5 months before its release. It launched in September, and it was rated in April. Let's keep sticking to this year, though. Kirby and the Forgotten Land by HAL, published by Nintendo but developed by HAL. That game was rated 9 months before it released, in June 2021. They sat on Kirby for practically a year. Let's look at this year, though, 2024. Starting in January with another Code Recollection. That game released January 2024. Was rated January 2023. And again, this is another company's developed game. This is done by Arc System Works, published by Nintendo. And they just let them just sit there for a whole year, being unable to talk about the game they made, which is just kind of funny. Intelligent Systems, though, are funny in general. So we already know they sat on Fire Emblem Engage for practically 2 years. But with Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, it's not 2 years, but it's still a pretty long time. That game released in May 2024, was rated in June 2023. These people at the USK are just playing games before they're even announced, and then they don't get to play them when they're finished for an extra year. And sticking on the RPG front, with our newest game, do you all know when Mario and Luigi Brothership was finished? This November 2024 game? January, the start of this year. 11 months ago. January 2024. Now, of course, when it comes to all of this, these games could be still in development. They could be sent to the USK because they are complete. They may not be entirely finished in terms of bugs and polishing. And maybe they do spend 2 years polishing. It's not likely, but maybe they do. However, even if that is the case, most of the team would have moved on to another project by then. I can quite confidently say that Fire Emblem Engage was probably finished maybe 2 months, 3 months, 4 months after it was submitted to the USK. And then I imagine the next Fire Emblem's already finished. I imagine the next game, whatever it is, USK have played it, and it's probably ready to release whenever they announce it. It's been sitting on a shelf at Nintendo's HQ. And what's kind of interesting is while Nintendo don't usually say when a game has gone gold, data miners can find out in some cases. So, Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, released in June of this year, it was rated November 2023. So we're talking, like 7 months? 7 months rating prior to release. Although, we know with this game, the final build, the final time that they patched it before it released, was March 2024, which is just 3 months before its launch, and March also being 4 months after the USK rating. So it's hard to say exactly if that's common for Nintendo, but that's still a 4-month polishing period, which is double what Sony were doing on their biggest games, which is just kind of nuts. But yeah, this is generally the thing. If you've ever wondered, do Nintendo really complete a game and then just not release it for years? The answer is yeah. The answer is yes, they do it all the time. It's common for them to spend 4, 5, 6 months polishing a game. And it's even more common for them to finish a game and then just not release it until the time is right. And they can do that because they pretty much have a game every single month. They've got time to spread these things out in a way that Microsoft and PlayStation don't really do. For them, once a game is finished, it's release time. A lot of the time, once it's gone gold, it releases a few weeks later. Nintendo, as far as I can see in the Switch era, have never done that. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me for this little adventure through the USK rating system. And it's going to be interesting to see how, or if this changes with Switch 2, whether games need more or less polishing time. We shall see. Thanks so much. Catch you next time. Bye, everyone.